economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today here on Point of View. We're going to be talking about a number of issues today, but we wanted to start out for just a few minutes to talk about Hurricane Harvey. 20 trillion gallons of water have been dumped on Houston, and as a result, about 30,000 people are seeking shelters around not only the state, but in other areas as well. We'll be talking about that in just a minute, and also talk about what you can do. You know, many of you have been asking what you can do to help, and by now you perhaps have received an email from us or even maybe a text from us in which we've encouraged you to partner with Samaritan's Purse. We have some of that information on our website, pointofview.net. Donate now. I have done so. I would encourage you to do the same. Or, of course, if you have received this on your cell phone as a text message, just follow that text message. 100% of the gift will be given to Samaritan's Purse to help victims. And to give us sort of an on-the-location feel for what is taking place, we now go to Bruce Poss. He is the program manager of U.S. Disaster Relief for Samaritan's Purse, and he's been heading up the response effort in Victoria, Texas, and he joins us now by phone. Bruce, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Thank you, Kirby. Good to be with you.
First of all, thank you for your service. We think so highly of Samaritan's Purse. We had Franklin Graham in studio here a while back as we were talking about the movie Facing the Darkness. And, of course, with us is just an outstanding organization that you are a part of. But, again, let me start with sort of an open-ended question. Tell us what you've seen over the last couple of days in terms of the disaster and the response from Samaritan's Purse.
Well, Samaritan's Purse has responded to here in Victoria. We also have a site in Rockport that is opening up. And so my part of it, I'm seeing a lot of the wind damage where the storm initially came in as a Category 4 hurricane, and it just tore up trees and roofs and just devastated so many people's homes. And it's tough that here still the electricity's out, things like that. So this disaster is, you know, even here is far from over. And then as you move up to Houston, and I've been missing the news for the last few days, but I keep hearing that Houston is really, really having a tough time, and the disaster is ongoing. So we have to continue to pray for these folks.
Right. You know, one of the radio stations that's down in that area, actually in the Corpus Christi area, has not had power and has been off the air. We, of course, wish them well before they lost the power. 75,000 911 calls in Houston, and as I said, eventually maybe 30,000 people needing some kind of shelter. There are people, Bruce, that say, oh, I'd love to give to some organization. Samaritan's Purse is something we think very highly of. Talk about how those gifts help you begin to meet some of those needs. What are some of the needs right now?
Here initially, Samaritan's Purse is bringing in our large disaster trucks that we and then ask volunteers to come and to partner with us. And so we're providing locations. By the end of the week, we anticipate that all 5 of our large disaster trucks will be somewhere in Texas. Right now, there are those 2 set up. But so initially, the funds are used to feed and house those volunteers, to purchase products that need to, that we use, and, fuel and all those kind of things to get that. And then as we move along in the disaster, we, just finding local needs, through our partner churches that we work with. And so it takes a tremendous amount of money to do these things.
Again, those trucks are just incredible. When I was in Charlotte recently, I was at the Graham Center there and got to see one of those trucks. And you really have to be totally self-sufficient, because it's not like you can go into the local Walmart and plug in, because there may not be any electricity. You can't necessarily hook up to a line and get water because it may not be flowing or it may be contaminated. So these trucks, which are just outstanding vehicles, are the best way to begin to instantaneously meet some of the needs of those individuals that you're trying to minister to.
That's correct. And taking care of our volunteers who come and help is important to us. That's, we can replace vehicles and things like that, but volunteers, people that will take their time to come and volunteer, we want to take good care of them and feed them and give them a place to lay their heads and to take a hot shower. What a blessing in a disaster like this.
Well, let's talk just for a minute about long term, because this is going to last for quite some time. There are, as I mentioned, radio stations that are not online, television stations that have been flooded. The Houston Astros are going to be playing the Texas Rangers in Tampa because they can't play in their own stadium. The long-term need is very significant. How long do you think maybe Samaritan's Purse will be part of all of that?
We haven't set an ending date. It's Samaritan's Purse is an organization that is in it for the long haul. We're talking months is the talk among
That's what
our
I'm thinking.
organization.
Yes.
So it's and then you go on top of that with rebuild. Samaritan's Purse has a rebuild program,
Mm-hmm.
and so we were in New Orleans for 5 years following Katrina, and there's a lot of people are comparing this to a Katrina-like event. And certainly, there are not many times when Samaritan's Purse deploys all 5 trucks at one time, but this is one of those.
Yes. Well, again, I just wanted to have you mention that because I remember how long you were there in New Orleans after Katrina. And, I didn't want people to think that, well, we give some food, we give the gospel, and we take off. I mean, you are in for the long haul, and I really hope our donors will be in for the long haul with you as well. So, Bruce, thank you so very much for a brief summary of what is happening there in Samaritan's Purse. Again, he is the program manager of the U.S. Disaster Relief for Samaritan's Purse. And, Bruce, look forward to chatting with you again sometime soon.
Certainly, we encourage people to come and volunteer, to go to SamaritansPurse.org and to sign up to be volunteers also.
Well, let's encourage them to do that. We do have some of those links as well. Just before we take a break, let me mention again that 100% of your gift, if you go through our website, will go to Samaritan's Purse, and that is one way that you can do so. So go to the website, pointofview.net. But there's another way that you can give, as I've just alluded to a minute ago, and that is we offer a text-to-donate option, and the listener can simply text POV to the number 76959. Again, you can text the word POV, and the number is 76959, 76959. We can give it again a little bit later. Of course, it's also something we've sent out to you as a text message, and we really are partnering with Samaritan's Purse, which is the organization headed up by Franklin Graham. They're already on the ground, 5 trucks, providing ground, distributing surplus samples, all sorts of things, providing emergency aid, and as he pointed out, going to be there for the long haul. Not asking you to do something I've not done. I went on our own website and made a donation. I would encourage you to do the same. So if until now you've been saying, what can we do to help? Well, if you happen to be anywhere near the state of Texas or would like to travel there, they could use you as a volunteer. But also, of course, you can pray for those individuals, and you certainly can send a gift to Samaritan's Purse. So we've made it available on the website, pointofview.net. When we come back, we're going to get back into some topics we had scheduled. Dr. Vince Bertram with us as we talk about his book, Dream Differently. We'll be right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, for the last year, we have occasionally seen violence on college campuses. Now, some of the violence has been making its way into the streets and into city parks and neighborhoods. What can be done to end the violence? Well, former Senator Jim Talent has some concrete suggestions. First, he says state laws must single out violence and disorderly conduct in the context of mass expression for special and certain punishment. He also explains that the punishment must be meaningful to the kind of people who do this sort of thing. He is convinced that the problem of street violence has grown so great that jail time is the only measure that will be sufficient to stop it. Second, he says that the laws must be strictly enforced. This is where governors and mayors need to step up. He says too many mayors have been lenient for fear that they will suffer political consequences if they enforce the law against members of politically favored groups. This is where the governors of various states may need to step in. In order to provide enough protection, they may have to provide large numbers of well-trained and equipped personnel ready, whether from the state police or their National Guards. In fact, he says that governors need to make it a personal priority to ensure that state law enforcement personnel are properly trained and equipped. Once those engaging in street violence are arrested and incarcerated, their names and their faces and fingerprints are on the books. That means that subsequent violations can be punished more harshly with felony imprisonment when warranted. As a former politician, Jim Talent understands that there are political risks in taking some of the steps he has outlined, but he also realizes that street violence can quickly get out of hand if officials do nothing or hope that violence won't come to their jurisdictions. This is how to bring law and order back to our streets. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Sony Pictures, All Saints, the inspiring story of Pastor Michael Spurlock with John Corbett. Now playing, rated PG, allsaintsmovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
The rest of this hour, we're going to spend some time talking about education. Let me just mention that in the second hour, Kirk Cameron will be with us. He'll be in studio with us. We'll talk about Revive Us 2. You may have been to the Revive Us first event that took place last year, and we're going to be talking about another one coming up in the future. But we want to spend some time talking with Dr. Vince Bertram. He is the president and CEO of a group called Project Lead the Way. Individual that graduated from Ball State University, has a master's of education, a specialist in education, and a doctorate in education as well. Has written a number of books, best-selling author on the subject of education, but this one in particular caught my eye because it is entitled Dream Differently, Candid Advice for America's Students. Now, number one, I think all of us can benefit from some of the advice, but I especially think putting this in the hands of young people and really challenging them to consider getting a good education would be certainly a great gift to give to them as the school year begins. And so, Dr. Vince Bertram, thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Kirby, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate the work that you've done over the years. Of course, we've seen some of the different kind of books that you have published on the subject of education. And in particular, you've even talked about the fact that One Nation Undertaught, Solving America's Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Crisis, which is why you wrote this book about the idea of STEM subjects. I know that in other countries, I did a study on this recently where they do pay for college education, like has been suggested by at least one presidential candidate. What happened is a lot of the young people chose degrees that weren't in science, they weren't in technology, they were just kind of fuzzy kind of areas, and it didn't work out very well for the schools. At the same time, we recognize that a lot of students that say, well, I don't really like science, so I really don't want to go into that. We have a critical need, do we not, to have young people consider getting into areas like science and engineering, because these are going to be the jobs of the future, aren't they?
No question. And I think you hit on a very important issue. Even in the United States, from 1985 through 2015, we more than doubled the number of bachelor's degrees in the United States, from 985,000 to over, to nearly 2 million. Yet the number of students going into things like computer science and engineering have barely moved. And we have a lot more bachelor degrees, but people going into degree program in which there's very little demand for those degrees. So what it's created is this subculture of underemployed individuals. So from my concern is we look at STEM growth in the United States is more than double of non-STEM growth. Unemployment is half in STEM-related positions compared to non-STEM. And those are where the jobs are and where we believe the jobs are going to be and the opportunities for our students. But the problem is if our students get turned off to math and science at a very early age, it's unlikely they're going to pursue these kind of paths through high school and college. So we have to really think differently about the way we provide education at an early age, and also how we start to get students to think more about their future.
Well, and one of the beginning points is what we actually say about these subjects early on. A couple of weeks ago, I had a guest on the program, and he was talking about when they were in a geometry class, and I guess it was a calculus class, now I think about it, and one of the students said, "Why are we studying this?" And he said, "Look, math and calculus is just a game, so I'm going to teach you the rules in case some of you want to use it later on." Well, you start the book by saying that sometimes kids sitting in a trigonometry class or a biology class or chemistry class ask, "When will I ever use this?" And if the teachers don't come up with a better answer, they're going to say, "Well, this is just hard, it's not relevant, and it's not going to help me get a job, so I'm not going to major in that, and I'm not going to take any more classes in that." Isn't that part of the problem?
It is part of the problem, and there are typically 2 or 3 responses that we hear. One is that it's going to be on the test, so therefore you should know this. The other, you need it for next school year. And then students will, when will ever use this math again? And we also hear teachers say, well, in case you ever want to be a math teacher. The reality is that, one, we can do much better than that because all math applies to real-world examples. And we have to help students understand is the relevancy of learning, the relevancy of this content. And when we can put it in that context, then students get more interested and more excited about it. They understand that math is really a tool to solve problems. We just have to make and give them problems that they find exciting and relevant for them. And there are so many opportunities to do that. And some of our most effective teachers, that's how they're connecting students with math and science in a rigorous but a relevant way.
Well, again, STEM is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and those are areas where they're going to be very successful. And almost without question, if you graduate in some of these areas in mechanical engineering or computer science, you will not only be guaranteed a job, there will be corporations maybe bidding on you like you were one of the top rookies coming out of, one of these elite schools going into college, because they're looking for individuals that can fill those roles and come with academic credentials that will allow them to be successful in their particular corporation.
Yeah, I like the way you frame that because it's exactly right. And one of the chapters in the book is don't be a commodity.
Yes.
And oftentimes, when you look at human capital, people don't look at it that way. They don't look at differentiation, but the reality is education can differentiate us, and credentials and skills and experience differentiate us. And when that happens, we can add value for companies. And when that happens, it's exactly how you have framed this, that you're in high demand. And when you're in demand, you get recruited. When you're recruited, it elevates prices and wages. And all of a sudden, our students have taken control of their future. They're earning a great living and the quality of life that they want and deserve, as opposed to taking the chance. And for so many, they get a degree that doesn't really differentiate themselves in the marketplace, and as a result, they become a human commodity. And we can avoid that, and we want our children to avoid it. All of us as parents want our children to have great careers, great opportunity, a high quality of life. And many of the things that we're doing at a very early age is setting the stage for that career pathway.
Again, the book is entitled Dream Differently, about 170 pages, Candid Advice for America's Students. It's one I think you really could hand to a young person in your life. It might be your son or daughter. It might be a grandchild. It may be a niece or a nephew. You really want to get them to dream. I would say, rent the movie Hidden Figures and see these African-American women that were computers and helped with the space program, or help them understand that they really can dream bigger than just the experiences that they have day to day, and help them be willing to challenge themselves to consider more difficult subjects. And just before I take a break, one of the other chapters you talk about, one time talking with a psychology major, and you ask, well, have you begun to think about graduate school? And they go, why? Do I need to go to graduate school to become a psychologist? And you said, even a psych major didn't understand that she had to go to graduate school to become a psychologist. So again, a lot of that has to do with the career counselors in school, but also some of the parents and grandparents listening to the program right now, doesn't it?
Very much so, and it happens across the country. We ask students, what do you want to study? What are you interested in? What do you think you're good at? And they pick a major. Well, if you're not good at if you don't believe you're good at math and science, you're certainly not going to pick a major that requires you to do anything above the minimum math and science. And as a result, they go through pathways without really an understanding of what a career looks like, the opportunities to apply those skills in a career, or the economic outcomes of those particular majors. And that's where I think we have to do a better job as counselors, as parents, teachers, administrators, as well as our universities, of helping students better understand what those pathways look like, and the things they need to do to have great careers and actually land the kind of career opportunity that they're looking for.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Dr. Vince Bertram. And again, let me just mention that we have information about him on our website. We'll talk about what is available at Project Lead the Way when we come back. Also, we have information about the book. It is published by Regnery. You probably can find it in your local bookstore, but we've made it very easy for you to order it there. Love to put it in the hands of young people to begin to dream differently, to begin to consider that maybe their dream is too small. Maybe they don't understand how, in some respects, they could really put themselves in some challenging courses in a challenging profession and really not only enjoy that for the rest of their life, but also make a very positive contribution to their company and to society. So if you'd like to join our conversation today as we talk about education, 1-800-351-1212, 1-800-351-1212. Let me encourage you also to go to the website. That's where you can find out more about this book, Dream Differently. It's also where you can make your donation to Samaritan's Purse if you would like to help those who have been so harshly and and have been hurt so much, if you will, by Hurricane Harvey. We wanted to make that available to you as we did just a few minutes ago, and it's available on our website, pointofview.net. Let's take a break. We'll continue our conversation about education right after this.
There are those who listen to Point of View while they're driving, and some can listen at home or at work. But here's the question. Where do you go where you cannot listen to Point of View? Well, if you have the app, the free Point of View radio app, the answer is just about nowhere. This is an on-the-go world, and now wherever you go, Point of View goes with you. Visit the Apple or Google Play Store and download the free Point of View app. You can listen and watch the program live or play it again later. Get Kirby's Viewpoints commentary. Click the Take Action link. Learn about important issues and make a difference in this world. You can also read articles, find a local radio station, easily contact us with your comments or questions. Don't leave home or the office or anywhere else without Point of View. Again, visit the Apple or Google Play Store today and get the app, the free Point of View radio app. Oh, and one more thing, if you like it, click that little button that says Donate Now and join the team. Point of View and the Point of View app with you on the go.
Point of View will continue after this. are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
Continue our conversation today with Dr. Vince Bertram. He is the author of the book Dream Differently, Candid Advice for America's Students, and also is the head of Project Lead the Way. If you go to our website and click on his picture, it will take you to their website, which is PLTW, which stands for Project Lead the Way. PLTW.org. And Vince, just before we go on with your book, let's talk about what is available on your website, because there's information about your programs, your partnership, and other resources. So talk about what people will find when they land on your website.
Great, thank you. A lot of information about the work at PLTW. What we do is provide activity project-based learning for K-12 schools across the United States. We're in over 10,000 schools and millions of students participating in PLTW every year. We train thousands of teachers on how to teach in a project-based classroom to bring relevancy to learning, where students get to apply math and science and the things they're learning throughout their courses. But the other thing we do, we partner with college and university as well as dozens of employers around the country, top companies, and now companies that are hiring our students and really looking for the skills that we help develop, specifically around problem-solving, critical thinking, communication, collaboration skills. We have pathways in engineering, biomedical science, as well as computer science. And the interest in our program is growing. The other thing that people will find are a number of research studies that have been done on Project Lead the Way, demonstrating how our students perform relative to non-PLTW students. Our students do better. They go on to higher education. And then once they're there, they do very well. So we're really focused on this work and helping ensure that, and one, that America has the skilled workforce we need, but more importantly, that our students have the skills they need to perform in a rapidly evolving world.
Again, they're going to be involved in a global economy, and so I think it is very important to do so. Here's a couple of assignments I might give to you as a listener. Number one, there's a video there. It's about 5 minutes long. I would encourage you to watch that video, and then at the end of the video, there's a place where you could actually pick it off of YouTube and put it on your Facebook page or send it to someone. So that would be one idea. Another idea would be to get a copy of this book and use this, or if not the book, even the podcast of the broadcast today, and share it with a young person and really begin to get them thinking about their dreams, their goals, and their opportunities, because as we are in this new school year, sometimes they settle for second best. And I really want to encourage young people to see that they can do a lot better sometimes than they maybe gave themselves credit for. And also to recognize how important science and engineering is. 2 of my degrees are in science. Many of my colleagues have had developed programs in engineering. I put myself through graduate school program in computers. These are things that are going to help you be successful, and there's certainly needs that our country has. So there are just a couple of ways in which you can use the resources we've talked about today. And, of course, the book is entitled Dream Differently, about 170 pages, published by Regnery, and we're talking about that. And I wanted to get to Chapter 5, Vince, if I could, because the title, now we're going to go from preaching to meddling, I guess you could say. We're going to start using a little bit of tough love. The world doesn't care about your dreams. Now, that sounds really harsh, but it reminded me of Mike Rowe of Dirty Jobs. And he's spoken on this before. I think he's even done a TED Talk on it, in which he says, don't follow your passion. Because sometimes what we say is what are you passionate about? Well, go do that. Well, you know what? You might be passionate about something that you can't earn a living doing. You might be passionate about something that you're not very good at. It might be a great hobby, but it's not going to be something that you're going to be able to actually use to survive in this high-tech world. And in a sense, that's the same thing you're talking about here. This idea of following your dreams, you know what? Sometimes that's not a good idea, is it?
No, it's irrational advice, actually, and it's generally wrong. Following your dreams doesn't lead to economic prosperity. For many students, it ends with dead ends and a lot of unfulfilled promises. What we're really trying to help students understand, and we've never said in this book, don't dream. We're just dream smarter about these things and have a path and understand that to accomplish the kind of things they may want, it requires a great deal of hard work, a focus on education, having the right kind of education, but it's not going to happen by simply dreaming. And oftentimes, and you hit it exactly right in terms of the dreams, but also when we say to students, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy? And to your point, if you pursue something in which no one will pay you for, it is a hobby. And so what we really want is for students to understand what it takes to get there. Now, we also are saying we need to expand their thinking about a job. And oftentimes, take professional sports, for example. That's a common thing we hear from students.
Oh, yes.
They want to be a professional athlete. Well, let me give you a couple of examples about pro athletes. One, let's look at the NFL. In the NFL, the average tenure is 3.4 years. The minimum salary is about $500,000, which many make the minimum. So over a 4-year career, you exceed the average. You make about $2 million. You take home about half of that after taxes and agent fees. And basically what that means is you have enough to live below the national poverty line for the next 40 years. And 78% of NFL players within 2 years of leaving the NFL are in bankruptcy or under financial distress. Those are the ones who followed their dreams and made it. But the reality is you don't major in football in college. You better have a degree that you can use in which people will pay you for outside of that passion and interest in playing football. Now, you can substitute that for a lot of things. So what we're really trying to help students understand is that if you have an interest in sports, don't limit yourself to thinking about being the NFL star, but also all of the jobs available in the sports industry. You can be a broadcaster. You can go into equipment and facilities and so many in athletic training and marketing, all the things that, all the skills and professions that lead to running a business are part of professional sports. So don't focus just on the job, but look at the wide and broad careers that allow you to satisfy a passion and interest in sports, but you have to have those skills. You don't take a former football player and make them the marketing professional. You have to have a marketing degree and a marketing experience if you want to be a marketer. That's what we're trying to help students understand. Think not so narrowly, but broader, and dream differently.
Well, and again, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is in your chapter on don't be a commodity versus a specialty product. We're moving to this new economy, and you're talking about in there new skills in a new economy. When you look at the careers of Mark Zuckerberg or Bill Gates or Stephen Jobs or Michael Dell or a variety of others, I think it just is another illustration that maybe you need to not only dream differently, you sort of need to think outside of the box, don't you?
Well, you do. And also the reason we can call those individuals by name is because they're so rare. It's easy for people to give a commencement speech and say, follow your dreams, and or people who dropped out of college to say, hey, here's a path for you. I find it so ironic that someone who's dropped out of college would give a college commencement speech about dropping out of college. I mean,
and all four of them have the same thing. They all dropped out of college, which is terrible.
Dropped out of college, but people think that's not the cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
That's not. No. They weren't successful because they dropped out of college. They're exceptional. They are rare, and they're the top, not just financially today, but the top fraction of a % of people who have that kind of ability. The reality for most of us, it's going to require something very different. And the skills required in this economy are changing dramatically. We've heard this discussion. You talked about the presidential debates and some of the things being touted as a strategy around college. But the reality is, we've also heard a lot of people talk about middle-class jobs and wages that have gone away, because we're upscaling almost everything. Now you walk into a Toyota manufacturing facility or General Motors, you have Google making cars and GM's making computers for cars. You have almost every company becoming a tech-enabled company. Anything that we can automate, we're going to automate. Anytime we can eliminate human beings in this equation, it's going to happen. So what we have to do is make sure we're equipped to evolve with that kind of technological advances in our economy. That's what keeps us relevant in the workforce.
Just want to put this book in the hands of a lot of young people that might be making some really big mistakes about their future. And when we come back from the break, we want to talk about one of those big decisions, and that is, where do you go to college? How do you choose your school? And what about these college rankings? And how would this affect the rest of your life, and what that really means? And so we'll spend some time talking about that for a few more minutes with Dr. Vince Bertram. If you'd like to join us, we'll open up the phones, although, again, this is one where I think you want to sit back, listen, take some notes, and most importantly, pass it on to a young person that you know. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Every year, First Liberty presents the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award to a hero of religious liberty. This year, on the stage of the 99th National Convention of the American Legion, First Liberty presented the Onderdonk Award to Senator Ted Cruz. Before he was a presidential candidate or United States Senator, Ted Cruz volunteered his time as lead counsel on First Liberty cases. He was lead counsel in defense of the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial Cross. Cruz even took the time to travel to the Mojave Desert and visit with the memorial's caretaker as we, on behalf of the veterans of foreign wars and the American Legion, worked together successfully to keep the memorial from being torn down. Later, Cruz would work with us to defend against the Veteran Administration's unlawful requirement that a minister could not pray in Jesus' name at the funeral of veterans. Ted Cruz has a lengthy history of defending religious liberty, the very religious liberty that the men honored with veterans memorials across the country fought to defend. I would encourage you to go to firstliberty.org/award today to learn more about this award and see the Military Service Tribute Edition Henry Repeating Rifle that serves as the award. Congratulations, Senator Cruz, on receiving the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Could you lose your career because of your faith? Could your pastor be sued because of his sermons? Can students and teachers be punished because of what they believe about God or what they say? Can the government or even your employer force you to violate your beliefs? Get the answers, and if necessary, legal protection from First Liberty Institutes at firstliberty.org. That's firstliberty.org. If you want hope for religious freedom, go to firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Back for a few more minutes, and we are talking today with Dr. Vince Bertram. And again, he is the head of Project Lead the Way, and the book is entitled Dream Differently, Candid Advice for America's Students. I'd love to put it in the hands of a number of young people so that they could make wise decisions about their future. And Vince, one of the obvious questions, and perhaps one of the more important ones that a young person are going to make, is how to choose the school that you will go to. And of course, I'm referring to college. When earlier in the chapter you talk about student loan debt, it helps us also remind us that sometimes spending an additional $100,000 to go to a private school may not be the best investment unless there's a specific reason to do so. But help parents and grandparents right now guide their children to make wise decisions about where they're going to go to college? What are some things they need to think about?
Well, I think there are a number of things. One is certainly the cost of going to college. Today, tuition at our state universities averages about $18,000 a year. Private schools over and double that. So you're going to make an investment. You need to look not just going to college and what it's going to cost you, but the investment and the return on that investment. So if you're pursuing a particular major, then what are you willing to invest in that major given the economic realities of that return? There are certain professions you just know how much you're going to make and what the potential is. So you can make better decisions going in and what you're willing to pay for that. It just seems irrational to me to pay $200,000 for a degree that you're going to go make $35,000 or $40,000 a year. And particularly if you're going to go into significant debt, which as of today is $1.3 trillion in the United States, and it's of crisis proportion, and one that we have to really examine as a country. I think the other is picking the right major, and not just looking at the aggregate numbers that universities provide. I think it's one of the great injustices that we have. Universities will, say that here's the percentage of their graduates who have jobs within a few months of graduation. Here's the average salaries, but they don't necessarily break it down by majors. And I think those are questions that parents and students should be asking. And if I pursue this particular major, what are the results for the graduates from this university? I think the other is to really look at alumni support. And oftentimes, students don't pay any attention to that until they graduate or they're going into the workforce. But the reality is I would look at that as one of the primary determinants whether I want to go to school there. Do they have alumni support? What kind of connections do they have? And what's the likelihood that I'm going to have opportunities for internships with those partners as well as postgraduate potential? Here are a couple other things that I think we should really focus on. And there are a number of publications that rank college universities. And I think many people are now starting to challenge those rankings. But the reality is, what we know is if you're at one of the top 25 college universities and you can get into those schools, then go. But to really get to a place where you decide that you want to go to a university because it's ranked number 47 compared to one that's 67, it's just not going to make any difference for you. So cost does factor into that. And the other is that these decisions, people think, well, where I decide to go to school is going to affect me the rest of my life. The reality, it really doesn't. When it comes to employment, long-term, then experience really matters. Employers aren't going to pick someone because they went to one school over another. They're going to really focus more on the experience and the value add that people have.
Well said. Just before we go, there was another thing that I thought was really good, and that is you said there are 3 skills you should acquire in college, no matter your major or career focus. These are ones that occurred to me, sadly, in graduate school. I wish I'd known those in undergraduate school. But when I was there, the first one is communication. I remember in my senior year, they forced me to take some speech classes. I said, why? I'm never going to be a speaker. Look what I'm doing now. Business administration. Fortunately, when I went in graduate school, I finally took a class in accounting. And then computer literacy, I also saw that it was important to maybe know something about computers. Well, if that was true for me, as old as I am, because I'm one of the oldest one around the table here, how much truer is that today for young people? So if you are a math major, but you can write, if you are an individual that maybe even an English major, but you know how to do computers, these additional skills are going to be very helpful for you if you are seeking out a job or if you want to be successful in a particular job.
Yes, and it works both ways. So I think these are absolutely essential skills for everyone to really understand how business works, to understand how technology affects business, and how you communicate effectively. These are critical. One of the vignettes in the book actually is an interview with an executive at Google who talks about one of the most important things for him is his ability to write effectively. So I want students, even if they're going into STEM fields, to think about these kind of, or if they're not going into STEM fields, to really focus on these kind of elective courses that can help build that skill set as they're going along. One of the things I talk about in the book, and I and I make it very clear that I'm not necessarily steering students toward a STEM major. I'm helping them understand they need to make informed decisions, but if they choose something other than a STEM-related major, STEM skills will still prove to be beneficial to them regardless of which career path they choose.
Well, again, we have information about Project Lead the Way. It's pltw.org. We also have information about this new book. It's published by Regnery, Dream Differently, Candid Advice for America's Students. And Dr. Vince Bertram has been with us. And thank you so very much for writing the book and giving us an hour today here on Point of View.
Well, I appreciate it very much. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Let's just, before we run out of time, once again talk about the desire that we have to be a difference maker in the lives of those individuals who have been harmed by Hurricane Harvey. And if you are just joining us, let's just mention that we started the program today by talking with a man who's the program manager of the U.S. Disaster Relief for Samaritan's Purse. He's down there in that south part of Texas. And a lot of you have been asking, okay, is there something I can do to help? And so this is why we thought that we would partner with our good friends at Samaritan's Purse. Franklin Graham was in studio with us a couple of months ago. Of course, this is his organization. They already have people on the ground distributing supplies. Talked about the various trucks that are there or will be there shortly, 5 different trucks. Samaritan's Purse was there for 5 years after Katrina, so we're talking about kind of a long-term involvement. And so these are funds that will be used to provide this emergency aid. 100% of your gift will be sent to Samaritan's Purse, and you can do this in a number of different ways. First of all, you can go to our website, pointofview.net. Got a picture there of the flooding and of disaster relief for Hurricane Harvey. Click on the button that says Donate Now. We have some information about that. And, of course, we talk about 25 to 30 inches of rain. Of course, we need to update that now. Another way to look at it, 20 trillion gallons of water that have fallen on that area. And so this has just been a disaster that is so significant and a reason for us to get involved. And so there's a place for you to give online if you go to our website. Or we've also offered an option through text to donate. And this is where you can go on your smartphone right now and you can text POV to the number 76959. Again, that number is 76959 after you text POV, or you can follow the link that we've sent to many of you there just as an opportunity to provide this great need that is in existence right now, and I suspect will be in existence for some time. So we'll continue to make that available to you and certainly want to encourage you to do this. I'm not asking you to do something I haven't done. I've already gone on our own website and made that donation. It's very simple. You can do that as well, and it's available at the website pointofview.net. We're going to have in studio with us Kirk Cameron. We talked with him a couple of weeks ago about the heart of family. We're going to talk about Revive Us 2. Many of us went to Revive Us the first time a year ago. We'll be talking about this new opportunity right after these messages.
From Affirm Films and Provident Films, who brought you War Room, comes All Saints. New pastor Michael Spurlock, his struggling congregation, and a group of refugees come together, trusting God as they plant seeds for a future that might just save them all.
Start a farm, we work together, we save the church.
All Saints, starring John Corbett. Now playing. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. More information is available at allsaintsmovie.com.
Point of View Radio wants to fuel change in our culture, but we need your help to do it. And I use the word need very intentionally. I worked with a well-known radio ministry for 29 years, a program that helped a lot of people. They got saved, they got elected to Congress. It produced a lot of good. But people started thinking that someone else would give, and that program isn't here anymore. Your gift today can make sure that doesn't happen to Point of View. Visit pointofview.net and click the banner Change Happens With You, or call 1-800-347-5151. Pointofview.net at 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just thank God for y'all. I listen to you every day, truly. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
God bless you, Kirby, for keeping this show so on track and for the decades of wonderful help to this nation that Point of View has been. We're all big fans of your work, and we pray that God will just prosper it.
As a Christian, over the years that I've followed this program, I am constantly challenged to be on guard and to evaluate what's going on. And if for no other reason, to protect the caliber and the truth of your programming, I need to participate and to back your program financially to ensure that the truth stays out there for people to hear, to view, and to be a part of.
This is Point of View Radio.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kirby Anderson.
Second hour today, we have in studio with us Kirk Cameron, who certainly doesn't need a great deal of introduction because we talked with him just recently by phone about the heart of family, and I suspect many of you may be going through that curriculum right now. We'll mention that a little bit later again, but we're focusing today on Revive Us 2. Now, if you have been listening to Point of View any length of time, you know that we really promoted it last year during the presidential election. Revive Us was an event where you had Eric Metaxas and Ben Carson and Francis Chan and Jim McDonald and all sorts of individuals that I thought was very well done. We thought that it was important, even in our own Sunday school class, to get as many people in that theater as possible to watch that one-day event, one evening event. The next one is coming up October 24th. It's called Revive Us 2. And Kirk, thank you so very much for being in studio with us again.
Oh, my pleasure. So good to be here. I love your new studios. They're beautiful.
Isn't this something you got?
Really nice.
We had to have upscale for you, you know, just knowing you were coming in here. Let me tell you that it's not something for the faint-hearted. We actually left the old studio that you've been. It was at 3 o'clock on Friday, and 69 hours from 3 o'clock Friday to 1 o'clock Monday, and we were able to actually do this. Now, not all the lights were up, not all the cameras were up, but
the microphones were working.
Yeah, and the microphones were working, and so 69 hours, and we never want to do that again. That was really difficult. But let's talk about Revive Us 2. The first national family meeting was very well done. Of course, we had music. You had an opportunity to really learn a lot, and it was happening in the midst of a presidential campaign. So that was certainly another aspect of that, too, wasn't it?
Kirby, I'm sure you remember the anxiety that you felt right before the elections, and it's something we all felt.
Yeah.
I think as a nation, we were wondering, how did we get ourselves into this position in the first place? And here we are. What do we do? And I felt, you know what? It's always at that point in the story where God's people are pressed between a rock and a hard place, up against a Red Sea, that they turn their hearts to God and they have an opportunity to see him in action. And I felt this is the time when we call the family together, because that's what families do.
Right.
They rally in adversity. And we gathered 150,000 strong in theaters across the nation, brought together some inspirational friends who have answers like Ben Carson, Francis Chan, James McDonald, Metaxas, and said, what do we do? And we had a night of hope, of inspiration, of prayer and worship, and talk about God's strategy for reviving the heart of a nation. And, you know, like Israel of old, you know, it had God's laws, it had his ways, it had his promises, and they stray away. And David says, oh, revive us again, Lord. Bring us back to you, that we will rejoice in you, not in this other garbage, not in ourselves. And I'm thinking, that's what we have to call this, revive us.
Yes.
That's what we need in America, a revival.
Well, and again, if you look at some of the revivals in America, First Great Awakening, Jonathan Edwards and George Whitfield.
Where's our Whitfield today?
Yeah.
Where's our Edwards today?
Second Great Awakening, Charles Finney and others, and you've had the Layman's Prayer revivals, and, of course, even some of the revivals that took place under Billy Graham. But we've needed that, and I think more than ever, this is a nation over the last couple of weeks, Kirk, that just seems to have split apart. Have you noticed that as well?
It has, and, you know, I have a bit of a different perspective. You know, some people have a doom and gloom, pessimistic outlook on the future, but I can't help but say, wait a minute. Jesus came, and when he came, he came to destroy the works of the devil. And he says, go and disciple the nations, and I will be with you. And I want to see people of faith grab a hold of the promises of God and look at all the resources that we have. I mean, for goodness sake, the Pilgrims showed up in a wilderness with nothing but a Bible and some chickens, and they built the greatest nation on earth.
Yes.
We're in a virtual paradise here today in 2017 with iPhones, and everything that we could want, and we're struggling. We're grappling for answers. And I think that if we get together, we get on our knees, we pull out the instruction manual for revival and hope, we can see it happen again.
Yes. You know, in your movie Monumental, you talk about that because they really did show up with very little, and a fairly significant number. Almost half of them died in the first year, the Pilgrims. And if you go all the way back to the first century, you know, you didn't have Bible schools, you didn't have Christian radio, you didn't have Christian media.
You barely had Bibles.
You know, and yet, look, they turned the Roman Empire upside down. But look what we have right now in terms of the resources that are in our hands, and yet everybody seems to be so discouraged. Does that make any sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense, and that's why I'm excited about Revive Us too.
Yes.
We had such a successful turnout. Not only a turnout, but people came afterward and said, you know, I was feeling so discouraged, and I think I bought into the line that there's nothing we can do but watch it all unravel. But after hearing from Ben Carson and Francis and Metaxas and others, I was reminded of the promises of God, and that the kingdom of God is growing, not shrinking, and that God's kingdom wins, it doesn't lose. But the people of God have got to get humble again before a nation ever becomes great again.
Right.
And so people got off the couch, stepped outside the walls of their church and say, I want to be a part of creating the culture rather than just running and hiding from a culture.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are in this culture. Our grandkids are in this culture. Let's not let others lead it. Let's create it by stepping into leadership armed with principles of truth and goodness and beauty.
Well, and again, one of the things we talked about just a few weeks ago, Heart of Family, when you were talking about that then, is just your kids. We are raising children, and I'm old enough now, I have one grandchild, you know, and we are another generation that are living in a world that's very different than the world you and I grew up with. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. I mean, everything from social media and technology and so many other things, which are great tools. I'm a big fan of technology. But if we let them replace some of the more fundamental things like family and personal relationship and truth and the Word of God, we get sideways in a hurry. We get the whole thing upside down. And so I want to do what I can to affect the change I'd like to see in the world by talking with you, doing events like Revive Us, partnering with people who are like-minded, because the truth is, when the family of God gets together and the Spirit is moving and we work together not for our agenda but for the Lord's agenda, we're unstoppable.
We need to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Kirk Cameron. But by the way, as we always do, we'll open up the phones because I'd love to hear from some of you, maybe that were at the Revive Us National Family Meeting last year. This one taking place October 24th. If you go to the website, it's a Fathom event, and so you can find out more about this. And we have a video there. It's a real short video. You might watch it, then click the share button. Put it on your Facebook page. Start some conversation. Get some other people excited about this. I've said before that one of the things I did in my own Sunday school class is make sure that almost everybody in the Sunday school class came to the theater. One time we were able to get so many people showing up for one of these Fathom events, we actually got the whole theater. We just said, we'll buy all the tickets and then distribute them out to everybody there. And so let me encourage you to begin to plan now for October 24th. This is just a great opportunity. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some of the other people that are going to be part of this event and how you can be involved. And if you'd like to join us, love to hear your comments about the previous family meeting, or maybe even some thoughts you have about the need for revival and prayer for the nation. We'll take a break and continue our conversation with Kirk Cameron right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
You know, for the last year, we have occasionally seen violence on college campuses. Now, some of the violence has been making its way into the streets and into city parks and neighborhoods. What can be done to end the violence? Well, former Senator Jim Talent has some concrete suggestions. First, he says state laws must single out violence and disorderly conduct in the context of mass expression for special and certain punishment. He also explains that the punishment must be meaningful to the kind of people who do this sort of thing. He is convinced that the problem of street violence has grown so great that jail time is the only measure that will be sufficient to stop it. Second, he says that the laws must be strictly enforced. This is where governors and mayors need to step up. He says too many mayors have been lenient for fear that they will suffer political consequences if they enforce the law against members of politically favored groups. This is where the governors of various states may need to step in. In order to provide enough protection, they may have to provide large numbers of well-trained and equipped personnel ready, whether from the state police or their National Guards. In fact, he says that governors need to make it a personal priority to ensure that state law enforcement personnel are properly trained and equipped. Once those engaging in street violence are arrested and incarcerated, their names and their faces and fingerprints are on the books. That means that subsequent violations can be punished more harshly with felony imprisonment when warranted. As a former politician, Jim Talent understands that there are political risks in taking some of the steps he has outlined, but he also realizes that street violence can quickly get out of hand if officials do nothing or hope that violence won't come to their jurisdictions. This is how to bring law and order back to our streets. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
From Sony Pictures, All Saints, the inspiring story of Pastor Michael Spurlock with John Corbett, now playing rated PG, allsaintsmovie.com.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Kirk Cameron in studio with us today, and if you'd like to join our conversation, 1-800-351-1212. Last time we, of course, had Revive Us, and I might just mention that the video is available. Those of you watching right now, this is a video that I would highly recommend that you watch in preparation for Revive Us 2. Last time, Kirk, it was really kind of a diagnosis, and to have such brilliant people as Dr. Ben Carson and Eric Metaxas really looking at it from a political point of view, to have Francis Chan and James McDonald looking at it from a theological point of view, that was a real good diagnosis. But now Revive Us 2 is a little bit different, isn't it? Talk about that.
Well, you just described exactly what we did just prior to the presidential elections, and we held that actually the night before the presidential debate, the final debate. So tensions were high. It was the cage match. It was the McGregor-Mayweather fight in the political realms.
Yes, right.
And we got a great diagnosis, but also a great prescription from Dr. Carson. And he said, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray. And Dr. McDonald said that too. Before America will ever be great again, God's people have to get humble again and come together. Well, since the election and the appointment of our president, things have not settled down, have they?
Not exactly.
It's like it's gotten even worse. The pressure cooker has been turned up to high, and we've got seismic faults running through the culture in the areas of politics, religion, race, gender, economics. Even within families, we see so much division. How in the world can we stand as a nation if we're so divided? So I believe it's time for the next national family meeting. I want the family of faith to come together, all together on one night. Dr. Carson is coming back to join us, along with Ravi Zacharias.
Very good.
Johnny Erickson Tada. Trillia Newbell, who's going to be talking with us about racial division and reconciliation. And hopefully Stephen Kendrick, I'm hoping will join us. And, of course, he's the producer who worked on Fireproof with me and the movies Courageous and War Room. We've got some musical guests, and we're going to be talking about unity, how badly we need it, how badly we need to come together as the family of faith and finding a path to get there. And we believe that Revive Us 2 is going to offer a faith-filled solution for all who care about the future of America.
Talk about what that's going to be like, because some of our listeners have been to one of these events, but a number of them might say, well, I would go out of my way to hear any one of those speakers, Ravi Zacharias, Johnny Erickson Tada, whatever. How does that all come together in that one-night event? Talk about that.
It's really a unique thing, and I'm so thrilled that 150,000 people came last time, not really knowing what they were going to get. but I'm sure they're all going to come back and bring their friends, because we had nothing but positive results.
That's right.
What it was, Kirby, was think of calling the entire nation to church at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and you don't go to your church. We're going to the center of cultural formation, the movie theaters. I mean, that's where so many people's worldview is actually informed and shaped. We're going into movie theaters, and think of it as a combination of church happening simultaneously across the nation with fantastic inspirational speakers and teachers, combined with a town hall meeting where we discuss the issues. There's even a live question and answer time where people send in your questions on Facebook, and Ravi Zacharias and Francis Chan and Ben Carson and me and Metaxas and McDonald and others, we will answer your questions in the context of what we're talking about. And then we'll sing, we'll pray, and we will learn the strategy of true unity, not uniformity, not Xing out other people's ways of thinking, but understanding how God brings people together under the banner of truth, and we can celebrate our differences in that context and discover what true unity looks like.
You know, and again, you see some of the images of that in the book of Revelation, where every tribe, every nation, every tongue come together. Now, until we have the new heavens and new earth, we won't have that. But I still think that within the body of Christ, we really can model that kind of unity. It isn't where we downplay our differences. We celebrate the differences of ethnicity, the differences of gender, the differences of culture, but we're all unified because of our belief in Jesus Christ.
Oh, preach it, brother. I mean, who is Jesus but the great wall breaker? He is the one who pulls down the walls between God and holy God and sinful man. He drops the wall between race of Jew and Gentile. There is no more division between male and female. Without obliterating our distinctives, he brings us together under Christ for the purposes of bringing the principles of heaven to earth. And we want to not only celebrate that, we want to unpack those principles and show how we can do that. Jesus is the one who can break the chains. And I can't wait to hear from Johnny Erickson Tada. I mean, think about this. Think of this just quick analogy. Johnny is just celebrated 50 years in her wheelchair. She celebrated it in her wheelchair, and she says today, I would rather be in this wheelchair knowing Jesus than out of this wheelchair not knowing him. And, you know, she suffers from chronic pain, even though she can't feel her body from the shoulders down. She suffers from chronic pain in her back and in her legs. How is that possible? 50 years after the event, she feels chronic pain.
Yes.
And I think of our nation. Many, many years after the Emancipation Proclamation, we are still feeling and experiencing a lingering pain in our nation that dominates the headlines with racism and other issues. Is there a solution? I believe there is. I believe God has a solution for that. And that's why it's so important that we talk about it without the political police, gagging us and telling us not to talk. and being able to discuss things in a way that brings healing and reconciliation.
One of the others is Ravi Zacharias, who I've known for decades. And again, here's a bright man, right? You know, somebody who really understands the culture and really understands how we as Christians are to live out in this culture, which again is going to be one of the great challenges as our culture maybe seems to be turning a little bit more hostile to Christian faith.
Well, it is, and that's why I'm excited to hear from Ravi on this. By the way, I've asked, I think I've been pronouncing his name wrong all these years because I hear some people say Ravi, some people say Ravi, and I say, how do you pronounce your name, brother? He says, oh, Kirk, it's like this, Ravi, like lovey, Ravi like lovey.
Ravi.
Yeah, so it's Ravi, and he travels all over the world and speaks with government officials and dignitaries. And, you know, as a man who grew up in a Hindu culture, so brilliant and exploring all the different world religions and even life without God, he's come to the fantastic conclusion that there's only one way to live life. There's only one way that man can truly live. He can exist without God, but he cannot truly live without God. And he has found the one who can bring people together across religious divides. And I can't wait to hear how he phrases it.
Well, again, some of the individuals that you're going to have a chance to hear from, again, are part of Revive Us 2. Again, that takes place October 24th, and that's live. So, I mean, and it's got to be a little nerve-wracking for you. They go, you're on.
There's no take two. It's
There's
absolutely
no take
live
two. And
over
you got to
satellite.
think about the questions, and you got to move things back and forth. It's kind of like live radio, like we're doing right now. But that's tough.
Yeah, it's exciting though.
There's
really
no
take two.
I might just mention too that if for some reason you're looking at your calendar saying I can't come October 24th, there is an encore event later on, so we'll talk about that as well. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we want to again encourage you to find out a little bit more about this. We have a link to fathomevents.com, or you can just simply go to Revive Us 2. There's all sorts of links that we've provided, and I would encourage you to find out more and consider right now putting it on your calendar. You might want to watch the video, which we have there, so that you can maybe put that on your Facebook page. And as you go to the break, let me just also mention that we've been encouraging some of you to consider what you might do to help those who are suffering right now because of Hurricane Harvey. We have partnered with our friends at Samaritan's Purse, of course, Franklin Graham's organization, and he was in studio with us recently on his own Fathom event a while back. And so if you would like to do that, go to the website pointofview.net. We have a section there, Disaster Relief for Hurricane Harvey. As you go there, the funds will be provided for emergency aid, and about 100% of the gift will be sent to Samaritan's Purse. So this is a way in which you can support the ministry. If you don't have access to a computer, let me just mention, I haven't said this before, that you can mail your check to Point of View, Post Office Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Just put on note saying this is for relief for Hurricane Harvey. Or one other way we've made it possible is text to donate. You can actually get on your smartphone and text to Point of View 76959. Again, send that to 76959 and put the text Point of View, and that will give you an opportunity to give to that as well. We're going to have Kirk Cameron in for one more segment, and if you'd like to join us or ask a question, let's open up the phones, 1-800-351-1212. Make sure you mark your calendar for October 24th, Revive Us 2. It's just a great opportunity for you to participate, and we'll continue our conversation with Kirk Cameron right after these important messages.
Imagine you work where you know people do not share your faith, and they certainly don't agree with a Christian view of life and culture. You are surrounded by hostility every single day. How important would it be to have solid information to back you up? Jim in South Carolina listens to Point of View in the afternoons. He writes, I teach in a public secular university and enjoy actually being a voice for the biblical Christian worldview in a liberal setting. Thank you for your ministry. Thank you for being bold and proclaiming truth. And Jim finishes, I pray for you daily. Jim works in hostile territory, and he prays for Point of View because Point of View is a source of truth. Please help us continue being here for Jim and everyone else. We need you to visit pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151 and join the Truth Team. Enable us to be here each day by giving each month. 800-347-5151 and pointofview.net/team. Point of View will continue after this.
Okay.
You were recording?
Yeah, we're recording. Okay. Hey, everybody, this is Kirk Cameron. I am so honored to be able to talk with Kirby on Point of View, and I just want to congratulate him and the entire program on 45 years of discussing the issues and inspiring the rest of us. God bless you guys.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kirby Anderson.
Final half hour. If you'd like to join us real quickly, 1-800-351-1212. Kirk Cameron will be heading out in just a few minutes to another venue, but he has been gracious enough to stay here just a little bit longer. And again, we've talked about Revive Us 2, which will be taking place October 24th. Earlier, we, of course, talked about the heart of family. And Kirk, I saw a very natural connection I remember Michael Novak used to say that as a family goes, so goes a nation. And it seems to me that whether we're talking about the nation or our families, both of them need spiritual renewal, don't they?
And they go hand in hand. They're inseparable, really. And I think that goes back to what we read when we go back to the scriptures. We see God doesn't create a nation in the beginning. He creates a family. He creates a man and he creates a woman, and there's a one flesh relationship. And through their children, you have a family whose job is to populate and govern the world. And from there, of course, we get churches and we get nations and we get everything else. And if the foundation is faulty, if the home is weak, then how can the structure stand? My wife sent me a great quote this morning that I loved. It was simply a meme on my phone that said, "The strength of a nation comes from the integrity of the home." I thought that's so true. You know, a home that is framed by parents who love God, who train up their children in the way they should go, gives reason for great hope in a nation. And that's what my wife and I are committed to as we're trying to help others with.
Well, again, you and Chelsea, of course, not only have your own children, but children that you've adopted. And so you really bring to the table in the heart of a family some of the material that we all need to know, because in a sense, we are raising up the next generation, the next spiritual leaders, and we have to pass that spiritual baton from one generation to the next. And so that's certainly some aspect of even the revival that needs to take place in America.
Boy, you know, you remind me of the importance and the weight of that, passing that spiritual baton to the next generation, because they will be the leaders. And we need to, I hate to say it, but we need to do a better job of that. You know, it's easy sometimes to complain about the generation that's coming up through the ranks, but we got to remember that generation was formed on our watch. And so we need to be pouring into them the best of what we know. And that's certainly what my wife and I are trying to do. We have 6 kids. Now they're 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, and 14.
Wow.
So, yeah, pray for us.
Yes.
but
the teen years.
But it's an exciting time.
Yes.
And it's a time where all those seeds that you've planted when they were young begin to bear fruit, and you see the quality of your work.
Yeah.
And it's never too late to start, but now more than ever, we need to double down on good and godly principles and live those out for our kids. Not just talk about them, not just preach it to them, but also to live them and to train them, walk together with them in this unique generation that they're living in.
Well, and again, you've heard me say before that when you have young children, it's in the valley of the diapers, it's protection. You're protecting them from those worlds. But now you're in a sense, you're preparing them, because a 20-year-old has pretty much figured out what he or she is going to do, and a 15-year-old is, again, pretty much already beginning to try to make their faith their own. It's been your faith, now it's their faith. And so this is, again, part of this idea of revival. We need to be able to live godly lives before the watching world, have integrity, back to that key word that you used just a minute ago, in a world full of hypocrisy and full of all sorts of phoniness. So it's going to be really important for us to live authentic, integrative lives if we're going to be really making a difference in our society and in our homes.
Kirby, you're right. I couldn't agree with you more. You know, if I found myself lost in a wilderness someday, I would be looking for something to give me direction, some sort of guiding light. And I think that our children are going to be finding themselves soon in a moral wilderness and a spiritual wilderness, and they're going to be looking for something that can lead them home. And hopefully it won't be that far for them to have to look, that they could say, I remember what my dad did. I remember what my grandmother did. I remember what she taught me in that Bible she gave me. Maybe what I heard on Kirby's program or in a documentary I saw or an event that I attended. And you know what? Maybe it's as simple as getting back to those eternal principles of right. No matter how uncool or irrelevant someone says that they are, maybe these are as timeless as right and wrong, as good and evil. And if we get back to these things, because we've seen them, because we've heard them in our parents and our grandparents, we can get back onto the high road, and there'll be hope for the future.
One of the things that I certainly recognize as a threat to our kids is this distraction issue, because they have these cell phones and they have computers and they have movies and all those kinds of things that keep them from really spending time in God's Word, learning biblical principles. So it does seem to me that, again, this is why it's important to have a national family meeting. It's why it's important to have family devotions, a time where we can be still and know that I'm God. Psalm 46.
Yeah, amen. And I find myself distracted by my phone, to tell you the truth. It's so convenient. There's so much there. What's new? What's going on? I want to stay on top of it. But I'm hoping that at Revive Us, we can take a couple of hours and turn off our phones and every other distraction and focus in on the Word of God. One of the ways we're doing that is that we are broadcasting live from the Museum of the Bible. This is the brand new Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. This is a monstrous gift to the world that the Green family has offered. And this is just several blocks away from the Capitol, and God's Word is going to be at the center of this event. And we're going to have musicians there and special artists. Zach Williams, who's got a song "Chainbreaker," which has been on #1 on the radio charts for weeks and weeks and weeks, along with one of the finalists from The Voice, which my family loves to watch. And we're going to be singing together. They're going to be leading worship. We're going to be praying together, and it's going to be an incredible time for people to focus on God's Word and on His promises of hope for the future.
Well, again, we have a link here, so let's talk about what people need to do. First of all, I would encourage you to get your tickets, and it's one of those ones where you can put in your zip code, and then it will show you, and I did mine already and found 3 different theaters in our venue where we could actually go. I'm going to encourage some of you that are leaders. Maybe you're a Sunday school leader, maybe you're a pastor, maybe you're a small group leader. Think about bringing just not only yourself and your family, but everybody in your sphere of influence. I'd like to have a problem of not having enough venues for people to see this.
Come on, right?
150,000, let's make it 300,000. Is that a possibility, do you think?
Let's do it. Our family is huge, and a lot of our brothers and sisters did not come last year, so let's bring them along this time.
So again, they go there, they put in their zip code, and then this takes place October 24th. One more time, give them a little bit of a feel so that when they're telling their friends why they need to go to this event that night, what is going to be the experience when they go into that theater?
Well, there used to be such a thing as an old-time revival where you'd have a big white tent and the whole neighborhood would come together and listen to the preacher, just fire everybody up and hoping the Spirit would move because God had torn open the heavens and come down. Well, this is like an old-fashioned tent revival, only we've got 800 tents across the nation. They're movie theaters with a giant screen, and simultaneously we will all be worshiping and praying together and learning from some of the most inspiring people I know. Ravi Zacharias, Dr. Ben Carson, Johnny Erickson Tata. We're going to have music, we're going to have worship and praying, and we're going to learn God's perspective on division. We're going to get out of this mudslinging gutter environment that we see so much in the media and get up to a higher perspective and say, what is God doing to unite heaven and earth? And He is doing it. He's been doing it in earnest for 2,000 years. And we're going to tap into that and say, where do we find a path to unity that is filled with faith and centered on the gospel? And I believe we're going to show that to you at Revive Us too.
Well, and again, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and they'll respond to those. One thing I regret from the last time is I didn't bring something to write with, because there were so many great, insightful things that I wish I'd written down. But, of course, we have that on the video. So, again, let me encourage you that if you've not had a chance to go to Revive Us the first time, there it is on video, and we have information about that on the website. And, of course, Revive Us 2, October 24th. And let's see if we can get hundreds of thousands of people out there to hear you guys.
Thank you. I hope so, too. And if you can't make it on October 24th, we have an encore performance on November 1st. So we're actually going to have it replayed in case you can't make it the very first night.
Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time to come in studio. Kirk, it is always great to see you face-to-face. And let's next time see if we can get as many people out as possible for Revive Us 2.
Thank you. So appreciate you. Keep up the great work.
Well, let's take a break. And when we come back, we'll get into just a couple of issues in the news that you need to know about. I will let Kirk Cameron head on to his next event. But again, we have a link there. So look, as you look at his picture there, just click on the picture. It will take you to Revive Us 2, a national family meeting. This is a way in which you can make sure that you and your family and friends all are there October 24th. Of course, an encore, as we mentioned, November 1st. And it's all available at our website, pointofview.net. Let's take a break. We'll come back and focus on a few other issues in the news and give you an update on what's happening there in Houston with Hurricane Harvey. All that coming up right after these important messages.
Welcome to the First Liberty Briefing. I'm Jeremy Dice. Every year, First Liberty presents the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award to a hero of religious liberty. This year, on the stage of the 99th National Convention of the American Legion, First Liberty presented the Onderdonk Award to Senator Ted Cruz. Before he was a presidential candidate or United States Senator, Ted Cruz volunteered his time as lead counsel on First Liberty cases. He was lead counsel in defense of the Mojave Desert Veterans Memorial Cross. Cruz even took the time to travel to the Mojave Desert and visit with the memorial's caretaker as we, on behalf of the veterans of foreign wars and the American Legion, worked together successfully to keep the memorial from being torn down. Later, Cruz would work with us to defend against the Veteran Administration's unlawful requirement that a minister could not pray in Jesus' name at the funeral of veterans. Ted Cruz has a lengthy history of defending religious liberty, the very religious liberty that the men honored with veterans memorials across the country fought to defend. I would encourage you to go to firstliberty.org/award today to learn more about this award and see the Military Service Tribute Edition Henry Repeating Rifle that serves as the award. Congratulations, Senator Cruz, on receiving the Philip B. Onderdonk Jr. Religious Liberty Award. To learn how First Liberty is protecting religious liberty for all Americans, visit firstliberty.org.
Could you lose your career because of your faith? Could your pastor be sued because of his sermons? Can students and teachers be punished because of what they believe about God or what they say? Can the government or even your employer force you to violate your beliefs? Get the answers, and if necessary, legal protection from First Liberty Institutes at firstliberty.org. That's firstliberty.org. If you want hope for religious freedom, go to firstliberty.org.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
Take a few more minutes, and if you'd like to join us, 1-800-351-1212. Kirk Cameron with us today, and we spent some time talking about Revive Us 2. And let me encourage you to take the time to mark on your calendar October 24th. Make it an event to really begin to go and to learn from these individuals. I mean, think of the people that he is going to have. People that have been on this program with us before, Ravi Zacharias, Ben Carson, Johnny Erickson Tada, and a number of others that will be part of that. The actual lineup is still being finalized, but those are three individuals we know that will be part of Revive Us 2 on October 24th. The first one really was sort of a diagnosis and a prescription, but now it's a little bit more of how do we deal with some of the conflict. And even over the last couple of days, my commentaries have been about that. My commentary yesterday, for example, was on Antifa, the anti-fascist group that has been kind of a loosely connected brand and band of anti-capitalist protesters. We've seen them at some of the World Trade Organization events. We've seen them actually visible at the riots there at the University of California at Berkeley, and we see them again in Charlottesville. We've seen them back in Berkeley again, and this street violence has been a real concern. And the fact is the mainstream media really hasn't covered some of that, but I think we're aware of it. In my commentary yesterday, I talked about Cheryl Gay Stolberg, who was with the New York Times, who, when she saw some of those individuals, these alt-left, if you will, individuals that were actually hitting people and beating white nationalists, she talked about that, and immediately there was a backlash saying, you can't report that. And so eventually she said, well, she was starting to rethink her earlier tweet. So it's almost like the mainstream media can talk about the alt-right, and certainly we've done that here on Point of View, and certainly they have as well. But when you start talking about the alt-left and Antifa, that is a very different kind of set of circumstances. So Revive Us 2 is going to kind of get into these fault lines, these fissures that are really dividing us as a country. And so my commentary today was all about some of the street violence taking place and the recommendations that have actually come from a former senator from Missouri, Jim Talent, the need for us to have some state laws to single out violence and disorderly conduct, to really begin to make sure that some of these laws would be strictly enforced. And this is where I think it's going to be important for governors and mayors to step up. He says too many mayors have been lenient for fear that they will suffer political consequences if they enforce the law against members of politically favored groups. And this is where I think we're going to also have to encourage the National Guard to be involved. Aren't we grateful that the National Guard has been involved right now in what has taken place in Houston and other localities because of Hurricane Harvey? And if you haven't had a chance to begin to get involved in one way or another, certainly all of us can pray. I think all of us can give, and I would hope many of you could even think about some way that you could volunteer. The National Weather Services have told us that the breadth and the intensity of this rainfall are beyond anything experienced before. Catastrophic flooding. We've talked about some of the numbers. Again, just to try to even put this in some kind of perspective, 20 trillion gallons of water from the heavens coming down. Of course, this is due in large part to this hurricane, which people in the Weather Service actually refer to as a tropical cyclone that have stayed sort of in one locale. So usually we have a storm, then the sun comes out and we pick up the pieces, but the storm has remained and it's not moved any great deal. And so this is why you're having a flood that rivals the great floods of Houston in 1935 and perhaps even rivals the hurricane that struck Galveston at the turn of the last century. So this is something of great concern. 12,000 members of the Texas National Guard there to be involved in various rescue efforts. And, of course, perhaps as many as 30,000 individuals that will eventually be in shelters, not just outside of Houston, but even here in Dallas where we're broadcasting, where this will be taking place as well. So as we mentioned at the start of the program, we really do encourage you to consider what you might do to help our friends at Samaritan's Purse. Now, if you want to give to Red Cross, you want to give to United Way, do whatever you think is appropriate. But we thought that many of you were saying, is there anything we can do? And so that's why we took the time in the first segment today to talk with Bruce Poss, program manager with U.S. Disaster Relief for Samaritan's Purse, to talk about what they are doing right now. 5 different trucks. These are huge trucks, by the way, that provide power and light and places to sleep and volunteers to work, which is going to be a long-term activity. As he pointed out, when you look at what happened in Katrina in New Orleans, they, in some respects, were there for the better part of 5 years. This has the possibility of being just like that, perhaps even worse in terms of the flooding. And so we're going to encourage you, if you can, to give your gift to Samaritan's Purse. We've made it very easy for you to do so. You can go to the website, which is pointofview.net. You'll see a banner there that says Disaster Relief for Hurricane Harvey. Donate now. Click on that button, as I did just before the program began, and you can put it on your credit card. Now, some of you might say, well, I'd like to write a check, or I don't have access to a computer. So, again, the way you can do that is send a check to again, Samaritan's Purse, Post Office Box 30, Dallas, Texas, 75221, or make it out to us, and we will then, as long as you put relief for Hurricane Harvey, send it on to them. Either way, which will work. And for those of you that have a smartphone, let me encourage you to use the text to donate option that we have made available. What you need to do is send this to 76959. You text Point of View, or POV, text Point of View or POV to 76959 to make a donation to help some of the victims of Hurricane Harvey. And that will give you a pretty good idea of how to then follow up and to make that donation. And I would encourage you to do that, as certainly we are concerned about those individuals that are in the southern part of the state of Texas. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, one of our radio stations there in Corpus Christi is off the air. They don't have power. They don't have a signal. It may be a while before they get on the air. Some of the major radio stations have been flooded out, and they're not broadcasting. They're actually partnering with some of the Dallas stations. So this is pretty significant. And so if nothing else, we certainly have a need for us to reach out. And if I can end maybe with my commentary, it is interesting to see how Texans have been willing to step out for other Texans. A lot of people have said, this doesn't quite look like Katrina in one sense. And that is because so many individuals of all sorts of different races, with boats, with cars, with, kayaks, whatever, have gone out there to provide what I think are some incredibly and inspiring images of heroism and helping hands. So it hasn't been just the first responders. It hasn't just been those people with FEMA. Hasn't just even been people with Samaritan's Purse. It's been just everyday people in Texas, sometimes from Louisiana. I noticed the Cajun Navy just showed up the other day, coming in here and rescuing individuals and coming to the aid of strangers. I would suggest to you that the image I want to have of America is not Charlottesville. The image I want to have of America is Houston. Individuals being willing to make a difference, to reach out to their neighbors, to hold hands, and to be able to actually be the heroes that we need to celebrate here on Point of View. Well, that's all we have for today. Tomorrow is our Millennial Roundtable. I'm sure we'll continue to talk about what is happening in Houston, but we have all sorts of topics, and we'll hear from Nick Pitts, we'll hear from Chelsea Yeoman, and we look forward to that opportunity as well. Visit the website, pointofview.net, for your gift and to get more information. I want to thank Andrew, Elisa, and Steve for their help behind the scenes. We'll see you back here tomorrow for our Millennial Roundtable.
Is religious freedom still a cornerstone of the Republic, or has it effectively been crushed by the forces of tolerance? America needs Christians to be informed and as unified as possible, applying God's wisdom to civic life. Point of View can be a key part of a successful mission. I believe in America. I believe God wants His best for us. We can face whatever the world throws at us as long as we stand together. If you have not signed on, please do it now. Support Point of View Radio today at pointofview.net. Set up your monthly gift by clicking the Truth Team 360 picture and then carefully follow the directions. Pointofview.net. By phone, you can give at 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Or mail that first donation to Point of View, Box 30, Dallas, Texas 75221. Box 30, Dallas 75221. Or call us 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.
I just thank God